Julie.
You're welcome, sir.
Hi all, how are you?
Mr. Gordon, you're still muted, sir.
I just unmuted and I'll try not to do that again. Didn't realize that I had. Okay. Let me line this thing up so that I mute it only when I want to. Thank you. We are all present. All members of the committee are present, so we have a quorum. Our first item of business is to approve the minutes of our regular meeting of April 7, 2020. I'll accept a motion for that. Moved by Member Robustelli, seconded by Member Bloomfield. Any questions, comments, or discussion on the approval of the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. All opposed? Minutes are approved. Ms. Rodriguez, do we have any appearances by members of the public?
Chairman Gordon, we do not.
Thank you. We will then turn the page on the packet and move directly to Departmental Matters.
He's muted again. How'd that happen?
Mr. Gordon, you are muted.
Again.
Okay, I will keep one eye on the packet and one eye on the icon. I'm not quite sure what happened there because I didn't touch it. All right. Yesterday it was our phone that was acting up. Today it's the computer. That's always reassuring, something new. Item 4A1A, request approval of the 2020 grant agreement between the Children's Advocacy Center and the Illinois Prairie Community Foundation, found on pages 3 through 6 in our packet. And I will entertain a motion for that. Moved by Member Solder, seconded by Member Robustelli. Ms. Evans, would you care to very briefly give us the overview on that grant?
Sure. This is a new grant that we are getting this year for the first time. What we wrote for is a training program that we're going to be able to provide to the community called Darkness to Light. It's through the Stewards of Children's training program. It's just a community-based program really for either groups or individuals, really to look at signs of child sex abuse and physical abuse. So our CASA staff had been providing this training for several years, and we would like to start to transition it over to the Children's Advocacy Center. So we have 2 staff that were scheduled to head to the facilitator training back mid-March in Indiana, and weren't able to go to that, but they will be going in June. So what we wrote for in this grant was really just the training materials that we would provide to community members when they come into training for the training, as well as some funds to provide a light meal to those that are in attendance. So we look forward to taking this training program not only to McLean County, but also to our satellite counties with Livingston and DeWitt.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions about the grant from members of the committee for Ms. Evans? If there are no questions, are we ready to vote? If so, the chair will vote. All those in favor of recommending approval of the 2020 grant agreement with the Illinois Prairie Community Foundation, please signify by raising your hand. All opposed? Thank you. That will move forward to the next step, Ms. Evans. You have monthly statistics. We have those statistics, members of the committee, pages 7 through 10. Any questions for Ms. Evans on the monthly information from the Children's Advocacy Center? Okay, thank you very much. Glad you were here, Ms. Evans. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. Next, we will hear from Sheriff John Sandage, items to be presented for information, the monthly statistical report, which in our packet is found on pages 11 through 14. Sheriff Sandage, anything in that information that you would care to highlight to our attention?
No, sir. We're still averaging about 140 a day. in-house.
Okay, all right. Situation about the same as last month?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Questions for the sheriff? Member Robustelli, go ahead.
Sheriff, I wanted to ask you about the video conferencing and the ability for inmates to communicate through the contract service that we have. I just want to make sure I have the information accurate, so I'm not making any, so I have all of my ducks in a row. If I understood correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, please feel free to interrupt here. Before COVID, there was a video conferencing system that people could go into the jail and use. And it's the same company that we use for people who are unable to go to the jail and want a conference call or audio call in from home. It's, I forget the acronym, maybe it's ISC or I something, whatever that is.
ICS.
Yeah, ICS. And so when the jail, in March, very early on, I think you were a leader around the state in terms of protecting staff and inmates, and you shut down the visitation area of the jail to prevent the spread of COVID. But that also shut down the ability, if I understood correctly, for visitors to come in, register with the system, and have video calls. I think they were allowed, if I understood correctly on the website, an hour and a half worth of calls a week, 30-minute sessions 3 times a week. Is that accurate?
In-house, correct.
In-house. And it's all through the same system as people who would be using. It's the same video call visitation system that we use for both in-house and for out-of-house.
It's the same company. I'm not sure of the same system.
Okay. So I guess, and so when people come in, they register with their name on a computer, and the inmate doesn't have to leave his room or wherever he is, or her room, or wherever she is. They're able to do a video conference on a computer. They have to register their name, and then they go and visit with that person. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is if this company allowed us to be able, we made the decision, you or whoever made the decision, to provide inmates with an hour and 30 minutes a week of video conference calls through their technology. They'd have to register, they'd have to log in, they'd have to do that. Why would it cost us any money to offer that same opportunity for their family and friends from home?
I'm guessing it'd be similar as to if you had an intercom system in your house calling to another room versus making a phone call. I'm assuming I'm no communications engineer, but I'm assuming that's what the difference is.
Okay.
And you know, yes, we have this video visitation system. It is a luxury. There is nothing in the Illinois jail standards that says you have to have video visitation. All these inmates are technically allowed is 1 5-minute phone call a week.
Sure.
We far exceed that. So video visitation is a luxury. It's not a necessity.
Yeah, I applaud you for providing them that hour and a half a week, 3 times a week, the way that you did. I'm just trying to understand the technology side of it. Like you said, I don't know enough about it. I just was trying to understand if, I think some people have this impression that you go in and there's a, plexiglass and you pick up a phone and the person talks, but this is actually a system in which you have to register, you go in on a computer, and then that connects you with the person, which sounds a lot like the same system as the system they're using for people who are outside of the facility. And so I just wondered if we could reach out to them and have a conversation with them to see if it's the same thing, if it acts that same way, if we can continue to do the same thing that we were doing before, since we don't know how long this is going to go. So I just was asking just to make sure that I understood how it actually works in the jail then versus now.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm no engineer, but I'm assuming that since it's station to station within the same building, you're not tying up phone lines or anything else as you would be if it's the jail to remote location.
Anything else, Mr. Robustelli, that you care to address the sheriff? Okay. Other questions for Sheriff Sandage at this time? All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, John. Next, we will hear from Coroner Kathy Yoder. We have items for information in our packets on pages 15 through 17. Is Ms. Yoder on the phone?
I'm here.
Okay, good. Good afternoon. How are you?
Good.
Good. Anything in your monthly report to this committee that you would care to highlight?
No.
Okay. Any questions from members of the committee for Coroner Yoder? Hearing none, thank you very much. Oh, Member Soldner, almost missed you. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I saw in the packet that the fees that we're collecting for autopsies is down dramatically, I think, from what we've budgeted for. And I assume a lot of that's for COVID, but I think otherwise, don't we normally kind of see an ebb and flow with that anyhow?
You're talking about the fees, you think they're lower? We're actually doing, so we used to do about 34 autopsies a month. This month we have done 60 autopsies. Sangamon County is a new coroner. As you know, Cinda Edwards was killed in a plane crash. So Jim Allman, who actually runs Sangamon County now, had a little bit of a bump in the road, if you will, to learn how to do a budget. So he was behind on paying us from Sangamon County. We're actually making more money now from all of the other counties. So the morgue fees, that's what those are. We bill and then they pay us. So we're waiting for reimbursement. Sangamon did us a rather large check that should be on next month.
I guess I was looking at the bottom of page 15. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's it. Bottom of page 15, under total deposits, current month morgue fees was $11,798. And according to budgeted, we've budgeted $70,000. So that's showing a difference of $51,000. So that's, I guess, where I saw that, and I'm not sure, maybe I don't understand that.
Well, so the deposit, we're waiting on deposits for this month. As I said, I think Sangamon County was behind 2 months of paying us. So the deposits will come in higher. I think this last deposit that isn't on this Justice Committee report was over $20,000. But
Okay.
Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
that
we will start getting money back. We're also getting reimbursed for all the stock jar supplies that every so many years we dispose of stock jars. We paid that up front and then they're paying us back for that. So, but the money is coming in very, very steadily. It was just Sangamon County who roughly does about 200 autopsies per year. And in fact, they had 20 scenes this weekend. And in fact, we've done 15 autopsies in the past 3 days, which is huge for McLean County. Dr. Denton is still here working. So the money is coming in, but you know, of course that comes with a cost to staff and to Dr. Denton.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that explains it then. It's just, in other words, it's just delayed a little bit.
Yeah, it comes as a physical expense to Dr. Denton.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Anyone else with a question, one or more, for Coroner Yoder? Hearing none. Ms. Yoder, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Next, we will hear from State's Attorney Don Knapp. Mr. Knapp, welcome. Item E1A, an item for action, request authorization for the State's Attorney to offer a salary in accordance with section 108-43F, subparagraphs 2B3 of the McLean County Code. This is found in our packet on pages 18 and 19, and we'll begin with my entertaining a motion moved by Member Schaefer, seconded by Member Bloomfield. Mr. Knapp, you have communicated with us by email. It was a privileged communication. Is there information that you can share with us that doesn't violate the privilege?
No, just generally that this is the type of action that we would normally go into closed session to discuss and then come out and take a vote in open session. Given I didn't want to put any more strain on our IT department than we've already strained them through COVID and in setting up meetings like this and having everybody work remotely. So you've seen the public action item explaining everything. I've talked privately. I've got all but I think one member of the committee I was able to get a hold of and explain the candidates' credentials. I do want to clarify that sometimes when you see this action item, it uses the phrase above the maximum, which I think is a little misleading. Our policies and procedures put either 100 or 101 steps in every job category. Those policies and procedures allow a department head with an impacted position such as this to work with the administrator's office to offer a salary up to step 40. I am asking for permission to offer this candidate above step 40, but it's still within the salary range of an ASA 3. And as you've seen from our prior packets, I've had 2 ASA 3s and 1 ASA 1 leave so far this year. Some of those positions are still open. So everything else is explained in either my emails to you or in the packet, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I would remind members of the committee that if there are questions, I think they need to be phrased with some care. But you can ask, I guess we can ask whatever we want, and Mr. Knapp can decide how fully to answer. But I would urge some care, some due care be exercised. With that said, are there questions for Mr. Knapp about this proposal? I see none. If we are ready to vote, the chair will vote. All those in favor of approving this authorization and sending it to the next step in the process, please raise your hand.
And just to clarify, Chairman, this is the last step. Well, the next step in the process is the county administrator and I trying to negotiate a salary within above step 40 within the salary range. But this is one of those items that the committee, it ends with the committee. This does not go on to the full board pursuant to the county board rules.
My apologies, I missed that. Thank you for the clarification.
All right.
We have, I've seen the show of hands. We have seen the show of hands approval. All opposed. Thank you. Mr. Knapp, proceed to the next step.
Other than that, I just have my monthly statistical report. I think you're seeing, and I didn't print it out. I've just got it up online here. So it's a little sideways is what I'm looking at it. But I think you're starting to see some of the slowdown in arrests and charges based on COVID. Where we wind up, I think, is everybody, whether it's budgetary, as you heard in normal last night, or any number of metrics will depend on how quickly things open up, how quickly for what we do, how quickly taverns open up, how quickly students come back. And it's going to be impossible to tell the full effect of this. One of the things I would caution are some of the crimes that take an amazing amount of our time, being domestic violence cases, are actually higher, but our overall numbers are down. And I'm sure there'll be plenty written about that later, but I'd be happy to answer any questions about our general report or things in general.
Thank you. Are there questions for State's Attorney Knapp? Member Solder, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 21, you have the asset forfeiture fund. And I was curious, there's an expenditure for $20,613. I was just curious what that was.
So Jim, that's a rolling total. That's what we spent year to date. and the $5,000 revenue is also a rolling total. We are, one of the ways we defer or we lower the property tax burden is much of the IT for the state's attorney's office and almost all of the training on the criminal side and continuing legal education credits on the criminal side have been paid for at least since Jason was here, and I'm trying to mirror that out of asset forfeiture. That's one of the things we're allowed to do. And so those costs are associated with, quite honestly, new laptops. We went out immediately with COVID and bought 5 new laptops to allow some of our people to work remotely that didn't have that capability. And now that I think about it, and Craig can correct me if I'm wrong, I know he's in the room, I think it might have been 6 new laptops for people that just had stand-up desktop computers. And so that's a big portion of that. It's IT for the office, and it is training, CLE training, as everybody A through M will have to report their CLEs by June or July 1st. So.
Thank you for that. Other questions for Mr. Knapp? Hearing none. Don, thank you very much.
You bet. Take care now.
You too. Item 4F, we are in line now to hear from Mike Donovan, the Director of Court Services. Is Mr. Donovan online?
Chairman Gordon, this is Camille, and I do not think Mr. Donovan is online tonight. County administration would be happy to try to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. The Court Services information is found on pages 22 through 27. Any questions for Mr. Donovan via Ms. Rodriguez? Hearing none, thank you very much. We'll move on from there. I know that Mr. Everhart has arrived. The Circuit Clerk, item 4G, items to be presented for information. Statistical reports for the month and for the quarter are found combined on pages 28 through 45. Welcome, Mr. Everhart. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. Are there questions from members of the committee for Mr. Everhart? All right, thank you very much. Don, thank you for being here and appreciate at least the opportunity to ask questions, even though there weren't any this time. Thank you.
All right. Have a good evening. Thank you.
And you too. Carla Barnes, the public defender, has already, we already know from Mr. Knapp that she was not going to join us, so that Ms. Rodriguez, you can once again volunteer to field questions and relay them if there are any. The caseload report is on pages 46 through 48. Are there questions to be directed to the public defender's office? Hearing none. Thank you for that. Ms. Rodriguez, you are now fielding questions for the county administrator.
Yes, I am. Thank you. That's a much better fit. So I only have my report on recent employment activities on page 47 and would be happy to answer any questions, Member Gordon, that your committee has.
Are there questions for Ms. Rodriguez? Okay. Hearing none. Any other business and communication to come before the Justice Committee at this time? I would like to bring up one item that probably has come to all of our attention one way or another and at different times. There is in the community some concern for the fees associated with the phone calls to and from the jail and video conferencing between the jail and outside. I wanted to get a sense of the committee. I wanted to gauge committee consensus or lack of consensus. Since there are questions about the fees, a number of us have been looking at this question. I want to approach this as a budget question, not a policy question. It's not our job to run the jail. That's the sheriff's job and the jail administrator's job. But the fact is, and Member Robustelli indirectly referred to this earlier, the fact is that before the COVID-19 pandemic came into our lives, came into our world, and that's what, 6 weeks ago, maybe a little longer, inmates in the jail could interact with family, with friends, other loved ones. I would assume that refers more to family than friends. They could interact with them on the schedule that was referred to earlier, in person, or at least in the same facility. Now, of course, that's not the case. And the sheriff was properly credited for being a leader in the state, shutting down the facility, locking down the facility, so that visitors were not going to be bringing risks into the jail that could put inmates at risk and could equally put jail staff at risk. And I know we are concerned about both. The contract with IC Solutions was arrived at almost 2 years ago. The contract was signed in early July of 2018, and it was approved at a stand-up. Now, nobody can predict the future. And certainly nobody 2 years ago could predict COVID-19. But I wanted to find out if members of the committee, I wanted to find out what the sense of committee members, what the sense is of committee members, to explore possible options that we might find or might have with regard to those fees. I don't want to start the conversation because I don't know how many of us many of us have looked at this in detail. I know I would like more opportunity to look at it in detail myself. But what is the sense of the committee with regard to the possibility, and I emphasize possibility, of requesting assistance from the county administrator's office to perhaps generate some options that we might just look at, not recommendations. That's for us to do after we have considered the range of options. But the budgetary reality is that the county is receiving more than expected from the fees that were established under the contract back in July of 2018 with IC Solutions. I've heard some numbers mentioned. I think they are accurate, that we have seen per month, at least in one recent month, something in excess of $17,000. In another more recent month, $18,000. That's good for county revenues. Those dollars come into the county general fund, not to the sheriff's department. But let me ask what the sense of the committee is and how individuals feel about the possibility of asking the county administrator staff to look at what our options even might be, even could be, as we go forward. Because as Member Robustelli mentioned earlier, and I'm sure all of us agree with this statement, we really don't know how long this is going to be going on. I'm very much looking forward to seeing all of you face to face for real, rather than on a screen. But we don't know when that's going to be. We therefore don't know how long the current communication modes at the McLean County Jail are going to remain in place. So let me ask what your sense is, each of you, with regard to the possibility of asking the county administrator staff to see what other options we might, that they might come up with, that we might be presented with, that we might at a later date, and not much later, maybe the next monthly meeting, that we might be able to talk about. And I'm not going to hold the administrator staff to the next month, but pointing preferably in that direction if we can. The way I'm looking at the screen, and also the fact that George Wendt is the vice chair of the committee, I'm going to start with Vice Chairman Wendt, and Member Soldner's hand was up so that he will go next. Member Wendt, would you care to chime in on this?
Gotta get my microphone on.
Yes, sir. And your camera too, if you can.
Oh, did I leave my camera off? All right.
We can hear you loud and clear. There you go.
All right.
There you go.
Well, I would say the only thing I'd consider, if we're going to do anything with the excess revenue, it should just go to the sheriff's department for their, because I'm assuming they've had some additional costs because of this. But other than that, that's why I think the revenue, if we should decide to do anything with it, should just be given to the sheriff to use in whatever manner he thinks he needs to make up for any additional cost he's had. Other than that, I think that the county should just hang on to that extra. If it's extra money, it's extra money. We're going to probably need it because I know our revenue from sales tax is going to be down. Our property taxes aren't going to be paid for, I guess, a short period of time. So I think if we're going to do anything, I think that's what we ought to do. But that would be up to the administrator to look at it and see if it's, and discuss it with the sheriff to see if that would be the proper way for us to do it. That's it.
All right. Thank you. Member Solder, your hand was up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd be interested in some kind of cost analysis to see what our costs are, what our revenue is, but any loss of that revenue is going to have to be made up somewhere. And I suspect it will be made up by the taxpayers, and I wouldn't be in favor of that. So again, I'd be glad to entertain any kind of information the administration could give us, but that's kind of where I stand. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Member Schaefer, would you want to go next?
I'm not sure on this. I know administration's very busy, and I don't know if we want to give them even more work to do because of working on with a different environment. Also, I mean, I know this is about fees, but we also received that email from Mr. Knapp this morning that has some concerns also as to how this is all related. And so I guess right now I am pretty, I wouldn't say not in favor, but not in favor, you know, at this point. I just don't think that, I mean, it's in the budget. I mean, the sheriff's office has us in the budget, I believe. If that's, is that what Mr. Robustelli was asking earlier? You didn't ask that question. I can't remember what you know, how detailed you got.
What I was asking, and first, I appreciate you bringing this conversation up as a budget issue, because I do think, as the sheriff has pointed out in his commentary about this, this is a revenue line that comes out of the jail operations fund, and it goes into the general fund. So it's the way in which this contract serves that purpose. What I was specifically asking about was the way, and he articulated it, although we sort of, I still don't know how the technology actually works. From what I understand, the contractor that we use for the pay for service, for those that make phone calls or do video conferencing, is the same contractor we use for the in-house service. So those visitors that used to be able to go into the jail, they would still log on to an account through our contractor and then have a video conference call, and they were allowed 30 minutes 3 times a week for free. There was no cost associated with that.
Okay.
So that's what I was trying to determine with the sheriff was, if we were doing that before in that way, what is different about that if they're logging in with their name and they're using it than people who do that from home? It doesn't seem like it would have a physical impact on us. And so that was the question, just because you asked. That was the question I was asking him, and it sounded like there was. I mean, it was. Of course, I didn't expect him to know the technology. So I think the answer was we need to collect more information if we wanted to get that answer.
Okay. But yeah, I do think it is a budgetary issue that we have to deal with somehow, like Member Solder mentioned, that if, you know, for some reason that we're not going to charge fees or whatever, then where are we going to make it up then? And so I think that that is a bigger issue than just looking at, you know, and I don't know if administration really has the time right now to do some of this work. I just, that's kind of where I'm at. It's kind of like, you know. So I guess I don't know. That's not really an answer for you, Mr. Gordon, but.
All right. Vice Chairman Went had his hand up. Just
Yeah,
ahead
I
of
would
you,
say-
so-
I would tend to agree with Sue, is that right now, the administration is pretty busy with all this other stuff. And unless the sheriff thinks that this is something that should be looked at, I think it should be just put off. And I think what we're talking about is we're getting some excess additional revenue now from that, and what to do with it, whether it should go in the general fund or what to do with it. And like I said, if we're going to do anything with it, just go back to the sheriff and let him use it for whatever, to make up for some of the extra costs that I'm sure he has endured with this. But in the view of that, I think the administration's got enough stuff to do right now to go into a bunch of stuff like this, unless the sheriff thinks it's really important to do it.
Let me clarify something here. These revenues go into the general fund as it stands right now. This is not a question of transferring it from the sheriff's department to the general fund, or, well.
No, I
was gonna say,
understand. No,
or vice versa.
Mr. Chairman, I understand that, and that's what I'm saying. I know what goes into the general fund, the excess revenue. And that's what I was talking about is if we're going to do anything with it, give it to the sheriff, because I'm sure he's had additional costs through this thing. But again, if the sheriff doesn't think that that's important enough right now to do anything, let's not burden with the administration with a bunch of extra work, because they've got enough work to do. I agree with Sue. They've got a tremendous amount of work that they're doing now because of this. So that would be my opinion of what we should do about that.
Member Robustelli, do you have a follow-up or something related? I'm sure it's related.
Well, I just wanted to provide my perspective. My last comment was more of just a response to Member Schaefer, because she had asked the question. So you had asked about the level of interest and sort of the appetite for additional information. I'm interested to learn more specifically, because I don't know that this is going to necessarily take much time, especially if we learn more from the system that we're using, that in fact, it's the same technology. It's just we weren't charging for it for up to 3 30-minute sessions each week. All of this is done through technology. And so if people are already logging in, whether it's at the facility or off the facility, it seems to me it makes sense for us to provide, if we can, the same opportunities that they would have otherwise. And particularly because we don't know how long this will go. And to me, I'm not comfortable with us being several months or several weeks down the road and having profited off of this group of people who are just trying to call their loved ones or their family. Well, the system we had was you were able to have free calls 3 times a week for 30 minutes a week through video. I think we should at least provide that, and we were able to do that before for free. So I just would like to know more from the consultant that we use, the technology company, about whether or not that's possible and what that would take. Because it just seems like it's all the same technology. It's just somebody walks into the facility, they log into the system versus off the facility. There must be some way to do that and tie it to the particular person in the facility. So I would really love more information. And I appreciate your approach to this, George. It doesn't need to be a recommendation. It's a budget issue and we need to understand it. But I'm not comfortable profiting off of this. That doesn't seem right to me.
Member Schaefer? And then we will bring in the other members of the other two members of the committee who have been quietly waiting their turn.
I'm sorry. I just want to go back to something that the sheriff said, and that this is actually a luxury. And even the amount of what we have inside the jail that was free was a luxury as to what is required, or what the minimum that they are allowed to provide for the inmates. So I think that we also have to consider that this is a luxury, no matter how you look at it, whether it's free inside or you pay for it outside. It's a luxury, and that there's a lot of other jurisdictions that don't have this. And so I think that people are fortunate that we can actually do this in any way, shape, or form. So that was just one of the things I wanted to remind everybody what the sheriff did say. Thank you.
Mr. Martin, would you care to go next?
I'd be happy to. These folks are in jail. We didn't put them there. They put themselves there. As Susan said and the sheriff said, this is a luxury. We can't provide it right now. End of story as far as I'm concerned. I appreciate what Carlo is saying, that, and I understand the advantage of having loved ones get a hold of their folks that are in jail. But the bottom line is McLean County is way above what every other county does. And unfortunately, because of COVID, we just can't provide that luxury anymore. So we just have to wait. Personally, I think we're going to be in the clear within the next month, but I could be proven wrong. I'm thinking probably within the next couple of weeks, we're probably going to see a decline and get back to something a little bit more normal than what we're doing right now. So I'm not sure that answers your question, Chairman, but that's just kind of where I stand.
Thank you. Ms. Bloomfield, would you care to get in on this conversation?
Sure. Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, first and foremost, I defer to the sheriff and his office's expertise on this matter. I echo the sentiment of some of my colleagues in that I do support prioritizing resource efforts at this time, and I strongly suggest that we consider revisiting this during and in alignment with the standard time that you renegotiate contracts. Thank you.
Other comments to be added here? Would I be correct in drawing the conclusion that there is no consensus at this time to request information from County Administrator Rodriguez or her staff? Is that a fair conclusion to draw?
I think so.
Okay. I'm not even going to ask for a show of hands because I'll see them all waving at the same time, or most of them. All right. I would ask that we keep this in mind. You want to talk about unforeseen circumstances, unforeseen consequences. There are lots of those in life, and none of them more so than what we're living through right now. But I hope we'll keep it in mind, and let's also hope that Member Martin is spot on his time estimate for when we begin to emerge from this. I wish I shared your optimism, and I hope I'm wrong and you're right. You can quote me on that, Randall, so you have witnesses to my saying so. Okay, are there any other items of business and communication to come before the committee? From members of the committee? From county administration? All right. That leaves us with bills to pay. And we have the bills for the month. They have been reviewed by County Auditor Anderson. She has reviewed them. She certifies that they are all in compliance, and she recommends payment of the claims submitted for approval. There is no pending total, so that the prepaid and fund totals are identical in the amount of $609,989.24. I'll entertain a motion. Moved by member Robustelli, seconded by member Martin. Questions, comments, or discussion about the bills? Hearing none, all those in favor of recommending payment of the bills, please signify by saying aye. And raising your hand, sorry. Talk about old habits dying hard. All those opposed? That was wishful thinking on my part. Thank you very much. We have no other business at this time. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. See you next time.